don't know that it's necessarily true, but I like to believe that if you have the opportunity to watch something like this, you can't be doing too horribly. Um, Although everyone is in a different circumstance than another, and perhaps you have Wi-Fi or data in a place that's more horrible than the place that I live. I just want to have a little open-ended discussion here about the state of things right now in the world. Before I do, I want to kind of preface this by putting a couple leads out for you guys, because I'm not going to discuss in great detail here anything that I think will warrant this video being taken down, but I will mention a couple things that will make the things that I'm suggesting a little bit more easy to digest if you take the time to look into these things that I'm presenting to you right now. So before going any further here, I want to mention Kary, the inventor of the PCR test. Um, I highly recommend everyone who's watching this right now, anyone who at any point watches this, to do as much research as you can into Kary and his thoughts on PCR, the thing that he invented. I believe the acronym stands for polymer chain reaction test. Um, First and foremost, that's something that you gotta look into. Um, there's a great video. I can't remember the journalist or reporter's name, but there's a fellow who I believe went to Hawaii, I think it was, where Kary lived, and interviewed him in his home for I think near 2 hours, if not over. I know that's a lot of time to invest, but the things I'm going to be kind of talking about here are pretty serious, and um, if you want to be able to consider them in any sort of serious way, if you take what I'm talking about seriously at all, it's a very valuable thing. I'm going to mention a couple videos that are going to take up a fair bit of your time, but um, in the same sense in business where you say time is money, time is valuable. Um, and, although you might want to watch something on Netflix or stream some new movie or show that you really like, or play a new video game that you just got, um, I can almost guarantee you that taking the time to watch these things and consider what I have to say is going to be more valuable to you. So it may be hard to find on YouTube as well. If I can, I will link it to the comments or to the video description, all the videos that I'm talking about here. Kary basically had a 2 hour long interview with a journalist who wanted to talk to him about his opinion on the AIDS epidemic at the time that it was happening in the 1980s. Kary was I believe, Nobel Prize winner of the uh, the Nobel Prize winner for creating the PCR test, which is what the WHO, or the World Health Organization, has recommended is used for testing for the current global pandemic. So, without getting too much into that, I just highly recommend that you go and find that video. I'll try and link it. Watch the whole thing. Kary has some very interesting things to say about how the test that he created works and doesn't work, and some very interesting things to say about Anthony Fauci, who is basically the person that everyone has listened to in regard to what to do given the current global situation. And I must say that Kary didn't have very many savory comments to make about this man or how he believed that this testing functioned. Secondly, I highly recommend that you all look into Yuri who was an ex-KGB defector who fled to Canada. I believe he lived in Montreal, and he worked in journalism. And basically what this guy did is Mr. Yuri explained to North America in college buildings and universities exactly what the KGB was doing to the Russian population and how it's essentially what was going on in North America, in the United States and Canada. And, the whole process that the KGB went through to, I guess, indoctrinate and put their population in a position where we basically find ourselves now. So without saying any more and making any accusations, I just highly recommend that you guys check that out as well. I think they're also an hour or 2 hour long videos, but everything that Yuri has to say, the first time I listened to him speak about these things, my first thought was, good Lord, that's exactly what's happening here. By God, he was right. So, it's invaluable information. Thirdly, I would really recommend that you all look into the history and the timeline of the business interactions between a couple companies, namely Bell, the Bell Telephone Company, founded by Alexander Graham Bell, AT&T, the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, which was actually created by Bell for long-distance phone calls, I believe, between New York City and Chicago. And then they branched out into different sort of operations, and then they dropped the whole telegram aspect of things. And I believe, later down the line, AT&T bought Bell. If I remember correctly, I made a timeline of this. I just looked at it a few minutes ago. AT&T bought Bell for 500 million or billion. Let me take a look because I got it right here. Quick reference. So yes, later down the line, AT&T buys IBM, pardon me, not 500 million or billion, but 5 billion in cash, which is still pretty astounding. And then even further down the line, AT&T, oh, I'm mistaken here, pardon me folks, I'm getting my timeline mixed up. AT&T did acquire the Bell Telephone Company, and then they acquired IBM. And if you know anything about IBM, they had a history with Nazi Germany. I'm not going to say much more about that, but if you look into the time, you know what, I'm just going to share the timeline. Actually, I should say more about it because it's not something that's, to my knowledge, gathered in any place. I had to do this myself. So 1876, the U.S. patent for telephone was received by Alexander Graham Bell. 1877, Alexander Graham Bell forms the Bell Telephone Company. 1885, Bell Telephone Company becomes AT&T, or the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Between 1877 and 1883, Bell System, led by Bell Telephone Company, later by AT&T, dominated telephone industry in North America for 100 years. Their system of companies was called Ma Bell, or Mother Bell. In 1899, AT&T acquired American Bell Telephone Company, who had actually created AT&T to provide long-distance calls from New York to Chicago and beyond. Now, as parent company of American Bell, AT&T was head of Bell System, or Ma Bell, Mother Bell. 1928, picture transmission compression was patented by A.B. Clark of AT&T. It was filed for in 1925, so it took a couple of years to get that patent. Between 1933 and 1945, this is interesting, IBM was founded in 1911 as Computing Tabulation Recording Company, or CTR, and they facilitated the generation and tabulation of punch cards for the census, military logistics, ghetto stats, train traffic, and concentration camp capacity for the Nazi regime. Now, between those years of 1933 and 1945, in 1942, A.B. Clark, that same one who had gotten the patent for picture transmission compression, completes something called SIG-SALLY, which is a system that included the first use of companding or compression in digital sound specifically. Jumping ahead about 40 years almost, Microsoft, founded in 1975 by Bill Gates and Paul G. Allen, forms a partnership with IBM to bundle their operating system with IBM computers. IBM paid Microsoft a royalty for every sale. In 1991, again, over 10 years later, AT&T and Bell Labs fully merge and are absorbed into the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. So AT&T and Bell become the same thing in 1991. 1991, pardon me. 1997, AT&T hires former IBM executive C. Michael Armstrong as its chief executive officer, or CEO. 1998, AT&T buys IBM for $5 billion in cash. 1999, AT&T buys IBM's global network business. So that was, I believe, the start of a network of entertainment companies and news networks and such. If I'm not mistaken, look into it because I don't recall exactly. Jumping ahead again a good number of years, almost 20 years, 30 years, 20 years. 2017, AT&T buys Time Warner and Warner Brothers, as well as many other media companies. 2019, in January, IBM releases its Q System 1, the world's first commercial quantum computer. Later, Big Blue, IBM, announces expansion of its Q network of quantum collaborators, ExxonMobil, CERN, and Argonne National Lab. 8 months later, the world's first quantum computing center in Poughkeepsie, New York. AT&T also developed partnerships with healthcare providers, creating mobile health-related connectivity devices that monitor patient metrics while toggling Wi-Fi and cellular connectivity. Between 2015 and 2021, John Stankey, who had worked for AT&T since 2005, when SBC Communications, the company he was CEO of, had merged with AT&T, continually received high positions in AT&T's entertainment companies. In 2015, Stankey became CEO of AT&T Entertainment Group, or AEG, which meant control of DirecTV, Time Warner, and in 2018 he became CEO of Warner Media, formerly Time Warner, owning Warner Brothers, HBO, and CNN. So in 2019, he is the COO of AT&T, still CEO of Warner Media. 2020, he steps down at Warner Media and becomes CEO of AT&T. May 2021, AT&T announces Warner Media will merge with the American multinational mass media factual television conglomerate Discovery Inc., also known as the Discovery Channel, for $43 billion. So, that was a mouthful, and it might not seem very pertinent to you, but with everything going on right now in the world, these are things that we got to take into consideration. We can't just sit at home and passively consume media and ignore what's going on. And I'm not I'm not suggesting that we necessarily do anything about it, but we can't just accept things as they're handed to us as well. I am not vaccinated. I'm a person who felt very strongly against it. I felt for as long as I can remember, as long as I remember having any sort of conscious thought, that the whole setup here, the whole system itself, it was not good. It was threatening. It was not something that worked for me. It was something that worked against me. I'm not saying that there's no value in education, but I don't believe that education necessarily has to come from the system, the public education or private educational system, you know? When I was very little, and I'm sure every child felt this way, but there was a terror. There was a terror in me when I was told I needed to go to this place and I needed to sit here every day and I needed to listen to what these people told me. And my teachers, they were under the impression that I had ADD or ADHD. So they told my mom that they wanted to have me tested. And my mom thought, well, that doesn't make any sense at all, you know, like what's going on in the classroom. So she volunteered to, help out, you know, in the classroom as a teacher's aide. And she sat in and she realized that they had us all sitting at circular tables facing one another instead of facing the front. So is it any wonder at all that any of the students had a difficulty in focusing? Um, my point is that what's going on right now and what we are being subjected to, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, are not things that we should be um, subjected to. And majority of people don't have the power of mind, spirit, emotion, or any of these things. They don't have any sort of personal power. They've already forfeited it. And they have this idea that they only get these things. They only get freedom from the people who, from the beginning of their lives, have taken it from them. I'm not suggesting that we go and live in a nomadic sort of tribal way again. I'm not saying that human beings haven't sort of progressed to a point that's commendable. But just as life and death are inseparable from one another, progress and decline also are inseparable from one another. While we're moving in one direction, we're also moving in another. And what we've been, educated to believe is progress and intelligence. It doesn't stand on the same ground as natural intelligence. And, when all this stuff started, I was extremely resistant to it, and I still am. And I'm trying not to stress myself out about it, but you look at what's going on, what had been going on in Australia, people setting themselves on fire in the streets in protest of this mandatory vaccination. Right now, people in Ottawa, people even here where I live, I'm not gonna say, but where I live, people are protesting right now. All this business with the truckers, blocking off the roads, the trade routes into the cities. Pardon me. Everything going on right now, I want to commend those people and say good on you, because you still have that fighting spirit and you still have a natural intelligence that it hasn't been indoctrinated into you. There's people who are so enamored with, Apple Watches and AirPods and, progress, right? Scientific progress. And the wonders of the world that we've created, that we're beginning to forget exactly what it is that we are, and um, what it is that's brought us this far. And we're leaving it to the people that we trust and that we vote into power, to make decisions for us with with what we forfeit to them. They don't even need to use their natural intelligence anymore because we forfeit ours. So they just do what they want, and it's not a good situation that we find ourselves in, and I think I think the worst part of it all is that there's no way to really talk about it with people, or talk to people about it, I should say, because of what I had just said. Most people, they've taken the bait. Most people, they want to see the new movie. They want to go to the concert. They want to go to the sporting event. They want to sit down in the restaurant and eat comfortably and enjoy their lives. And I'm not saying that I want to forfeit those things. I'm not saying that I don't want those things, and that I enjoy letting them go. It's not in any sense what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that life meant something before all of those things came around. And it seems to mean a lot more to people now that those things are available to us. But what does life mean if you take those things away? You see that. You see that reaction in people now. You take away, it's like a child. You give a child a toy. Think about it. You give a newborn a toy. Before you give them the toy, they cry and they cry and they cry because they don't know what's going on. You coo and you coddle them, they stop crying. You learn to have a child and have them not cry, and be calm. They're going to cry occasionally. You coo and you coddle them, or you leave them, you let them cry it out, right? But then you give them a toy, and they learn to like that toy, and you let them play with it whenever they want. You let them use the toy themselves to stop themselves from feeling the fear of what if I don't have anything? What if all I have is me and the way I feel and what I think, and you know how I take in my environment and what that does to me? And then you tell them, oh, it's time for supper. You got to put your toy down. I got to take that now. You got to come and do what I tell you to do. And they freak out. They lose it because they've learned that those toys are so important to them and that they need them. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with toys. I'm not saying that life shouldn't go without pleasure and external validation in having things. But if your life is over because someone takes your toy away, what kind of life do you really have? That's all I'm trying to say. Is that if you need to buy your freedom, then you are not free. If you're willing to give up your right to say no to doing this or that in exchange for something that someone is giving and taking from you, then what they're giving and taking from you isn't freedom. It's a lure away from what freedom is. And as much as I wish I could go and see the bands that I like, as much as I wish that I could go and sit at a restaurant and have a beer and eat a burger and just enjoy being alive in the modern world the way that I used to, I'm not going to do something I feel uncomfortable with just for the sake of that. Some people might think that's ridiculous, and that's fine. You're allowed to think that. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you to do what I'm doing. I just can't do it. I'm not interested in saying that 2 plus 2 equals 5 when I know that it equals 4. I love music. I love going out and eating. I love going to the movies. You know, I'm not a big sports person, but if someone had a ticket, I'd go and watch a game. And with all the restrictions and mandates, which are apparently supposed to be lifting for us where I live quite soon, let's hope that that lasts. I'm not hopeful. Um, with all these mandates and stuff, I can't go and do those things unless I go and get vaccinated, unless I wear a mask and do this and that. And, I'm a working person, so I have to wear a mask at work. My work hasn't been able to fire me because I'm not vaccinated, because there must be some sort of law against firing people for a medical reason, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. So, it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. There's boundaries that people are supposed to have. We're supposed to care about ourselves. We're supposed to think about what's good and what's not good for us. We're supposed to be aware of our surroundings and think about it ourselves. We're not supposed to just read an instruction manual and say, okay, that makes sense. That's the way to do it. Instructions help when they make sense, but if they don't make sense and we think we can make better sense of things, trust your senses. If it doesn't make sense to me to let the government stick me with whatever they want to stick me with and force me to wear a mask and do this and that, jump through these hoops and then you can have your freedom. What if I don't want to jump through hoops and I want my freedom? Well, then you can't have your freedom. Okay, well then that's not freedom. That's all I'm saying. And all the things I mentioned at the beginning of this video, they all kind of tie into what I'm saying right now. It's my opinion that the whole process of locking people down this whole past 2 years has been a way to calculate how many dissidents there will be, and how large of a number of people are going to be willing to just sacrifice their freedom and just submit their freedom for the sake of keeping what they believe is freedom, what they believe life is meant to represent, things that they don't believe they could live without. And now, what extent do we have to go to make the greater population retaliate and take action against this revoking of freedom? Now that they're seeing what people are doing, willing to do, to say no, like this is not okay with us and we're not going to allow it. Now that they've gotten that reaction, now they have the data. Now they know, okay, this is what it takes to get them to retaliate, and now that people are retaliating, now they're drawing back all these measures. And, they say it's because of the data. Well, it's not because of the protests that we're taking these mandates away and allowing your freedoms again. It's not because of the protests. It's because of the data. The data tells us now that it's okay for you to be free again. Conveniently, coincidentally, right as people are actually starting to act and retaliate against the injustice, Yeah, it's the data. You know what the data is? The data is exactly what I just described. Now they know what it'll take for people to revolt. So just imagine, we have this test run. Just extrapolate that and upscale it to a larger, more infringent sort of injustice and revoking of freedoms. Something like what happened in 1945, or the World War II, You look at the way that IBM assisted in that happening. You look at Bell Telephone Company and AT&T buying Bell buying IBM, and there's rumor of the Nazis having worked on a weapon that they called the Bell, or Die Glock, and I have suspicions that that might be exactly what I just described. And I don't know that everyone, I know that not everyone is with that provider, but enough people are. It makes you wonder that maybe that's the sonic weapon. We all got them in our pockets. I'm recording on it right now. For all I know, right now I could be shooting myself in the foot. That's all, folks. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just sharing information, sharing ideas, and I'll try and link the videos that I mentioned at the beginning of this video in the description, because they're highly valuable, and I think that if you sat through this whole thing, you're gonna get something out of them. Anyway, take care.